Your son isn't dying? He's being scheduled. A night shift nurse stood in a hospital parking lot at midnight, breath misting in October cold, clutching a phone with a recording that would destroy careers. Or save a life. 40 yards away, under a yellow security light, a man in a Hell's Angels vest stood with his back to her. A father who'd been told for 23 days that his son was gone, that machines were the only thing keeping a body alive, that the kindest thing he could do was sign the consent form. She ran toward him. Not walked. Ran. Because she'd just heard the chief of neurology on the phone discussing her patient, an 8-year-old boy, like he was inventory. Optimal candidate. Schedule the OR for Friday morning. Father will cave after the ethics committee meeting. What she knew, what she'd documented for 11 nights, what no other nurse had the courage to say, the boy wasn't brain dead. He was being kept unconscious. This is their story. And in the next 37 hours, 97 Hell's Angels are about to teach a 2 million hospital what happens when you mistake silence for permission. Here's what you need to know before we go further. This story gets worse before it gets better. The doctor we're about to expose didn't do this once. He didn't do it twice. And the hospital knew. So if you're the kind of person who gets angry when systems protect predators instead of children, stay. Because what these bikers did next isn't in any handbook, but it should be. Quick thing, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or state in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss stories like this. Okay, let's continue. I'm watching my son die, and nobody will tell me why he's not getting better. That's what Dylan Reaper Walsh had said to his brother 3 days earlier, voice cracking on a payphone outside the ICU, because his cell phone battery had died, and he'd been living in that waiting room for 23 days straight. 3 weeks of watching his 8-year-old son, his only child, his entire world, lie motionless in a hospital bed while doctors used words like brain death and quality of life and acceptance. Reaper was 34 years old, 6'3", 240 pounds of muscle earned from construction work and Marines Corps discipline, Iraq veteran, Hell's Angels road captain for the Tennessee chapter, the kind of man who'd diffused IEDs for 4 years and knew what actual hopelessness looked like. This wasn't it. Dylan, little Dylan, named after his father but with his mother's gentle heart, had been riding on the back of Reaper's motorcycle on October 3rd, just a Tuesday evening trip to Morrison's ice cream parlor, their weekly tradition since Dylan was 4 years old. Rocky road for Dad. Superman sherbet for the boy who'd just lost his first tooth and wanted to show the teenager behind the counter. They never made it. Marcus Holloway, 42, driving on a suspended license with a blood alcohol level of 0.19, ran a red light at 54 miles per hour and T-boned them at the intersection of Broadway and 5th. Reaper was thrown clear. Broken collarbone, road rash that would scar, but alive. Dylan hit the windshield. Severe head trauma. Glasgow coma scale of 7. Genuinely critical. The first week, Reaper understood. His son was fighting for his life, and the doctors were fighting alongside him. But then things changed. Small things. Uncomfortable things. Things that didn't add up for a man trained to notice when a situation felt wrong. Day 5. Night nurse mentioned Dylan's pupils had responded to light. Reaper asked the attending physician about it the next morning. Dr. Garrett Preston, chief of neurology, silver-haired, spoke in that calm medical voice that made you feel stupid for asking questions, said it was impossible. Reflex activity. The brainstem can produce automatic responses even when higher brain function is gone. I know that's hard to hear. Day 9. Reaper noticed Dylan's heart rate jumped from 72 to 84 beats per minute whenever he entered the room and started talking. He mentioned it to 3 different nurses. None of them wrote it down. One told him, kindly, "Parents often see what they need to see. It's part of grief." Day 11. Dr. Preston sat Reaper down in a private consultation room and used the phrase "likely brain dead" for the first time. He showed charts, scans. He talked about cortical activity and brain metabolism. Then he said, very gently, "We should discuss organ donation. Dylan could save up to 5 lives." Dylan wasn't dead yet, and they were already measuring him for parts. Day 14. Reaper's brother, Tommy Walsh, who worked as an EMT in Memphis, drove up to visit. Tommy had seen enough trauma to know recovery signs when he saw them. He noticed Dylan's fingers twitch when Reaper said the boy's name. He reported it to the charge nurse immediately. The charge nurse spoke to Dr. Preston. Dr. Preston spoke to hospital administration. 3 hours later, security informed Reaper that his brother was no longer permitted in the ICU. Family causing care disruption. Day 16. Reaper called the Tennessee Department of Health Patient Safety Hotline. Explained everything. They opened an investigation. The investigator assigned to his case was the hospital's own patient safety officer. Conflict of interest didn't even begin to cover it. Report came back in 48 hours. No deviation from standard of care. Day 19. Reaper hired a lawyer with money borrowed from his mother. The lawyer sent a letter requesting Dylan's complete medical records and demanding permission for an independent neurologist to examine the boy. Hospital legal team responded that Dr. Preston, as chief of neurology and Dylan's attending physician, was the final medical authority. Second opinions create care fragmentation and are not in the patient's best interest. Day 23. The ethics committee convened. Reaper wasn't invited, but he heard about it afterward from a social worker who looked uncomfortable delivering the message. The committee had concluded that Reaper's refusal to withdraw life support was medically inappropriate and emotionally driven. They recommended that the hospital proceed with withdrawal regardless of family objection. Tennessee law permitted it under these circumstances. That was yesterday. Today was Thursday, October 26th. Day 23. Reaper stood in the smoking area outside the hospital at exactly midnight, like he did every night, holding a cigarette he didn't actually smoke. Just needed an excuse to leave that waiting room, to breathe air that didn't smell like antiseptic, to stare at the night sky and remember that a world existed beyond those fluorescent lights and beeping machines. He'd been standing there for 15 minutes, head bowed, when he heard footsteps. Running footsteps. He turned. A woman in navy blue scrubs was sprinting across the parking lot toward him. Small frame, maybe 5'4", dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, white nursing clogs slapping pavement in a rhythm that sounded frantic. She covered the last 50 feet like someone running from a fire, or toward one. She stopped 3 feet from him, breathing hard, and for a moment she just stared up at him, this massive biker with the Hells Angels patch on his vest and the kind of face that made people cross the street. And he saw something in her eyes that made his entire body go cold. Not fear of him, fear for him. "Your son isn't dying," she said. 7 words, delivered flat, factual, furious. "He's being murdered." The cigarette fell from Reaper's hand. Ember died on wet pavement. He turned fully toward her, muscle memory from combat kicking in, threat assessment mode activated. His eyes met hers, and he saw hope mixed with rage, and that was the most dangerous combination a man could weaponize. "Show me what you know," he said. 5 words. "Right now." She pulled out her phone. Her name was Anna Mitchell, 31 years old. ICU nurse for 7 years, the last 3 at Vanderbilt Regional. She'd taken care of Dylan for 11 days, every night shift from October 15th through tonight. She'd watched a child fight his way toward consciousness while a doctor systematically prevented it from happening. "I'm telling you this because if I don't, Dylan will be dead by Friday morning," she said, voice shaking, but words clear. "And I won't be able to live with myself." Reaper didn't move, didn't interrupt, just listened with the kind of stillness that combat veterans learn when their life depends on processing information fast. "Dylan responds to stimuli," Anna said. "His pupils react to light. I've tested it 3 times in the past week. His heart rate changes when you talk to him. You're right about that. He has REM sleep patterns. Those are signs of brain activity, but none of it's in his official chart." "Why not?" "Because Dr. Preston doesn't want it there. He adjusts Dylan's sedation to keep him deeply unconscious during your visits. Morning rounds when you're there, Dylan's on heavy propofol. But at night, when you're not there, and the sedation wears down naturally, I see responses. Finger movements. Facial twitches. Your son is in there, Mr. Walsh. He's fighting to wake up, and Dr. Preston is preventing it." Reaper's jaw tightened. "Why would a doctor do that?" Anna looked at him for a long moment. Then she played the recording. The audio quality was muffled, recorded through a wall using a phone microphone. But Dr. Preston's voice came through clear enough. Educated. Calm. Calculating. "Rick, it's Garrett, the Walsh case. Yes, the biker's kid. He's perfect." Pause. "Father's still resisting, but I scheduled ethics committee for Thursday. They'll recommend withdrawal. He'll cave within 48 hours. They always do when we use the committee." Pause. 8 years old, previously healthy, excellent tissue typing. We're looking at full harvest, kidneys, liver, heart, lungs. I'm estimating $163,000 total recovery value. Longer pause. "Same as the Anderson situation. Between you and me, the kid's showing some response, but nothing I can't manage with sedation timing. Father sees what he wants during visits. Charts show what we need them to show." Pause. No risk. I've done this 11 times in 3 years. Hospital administration knows our procurement numbers are excellent. They don't ask questions because it makes them look good. And this father? He's a biker. No lawyers, no connections, no credibility. Who's going to believe him over me?" The recording ended. Reaper stood there in the October cold, fists clenched so hard his knuckles went white. When he finally spoke, his voice came out in that low combat register, the tone Marines use when making promises that will be kept at any cost. "How long do I have?" "They've scheduled Dylan's life support withdrawal for Friday morning, 8:00 a.m. Operating room is already reserved for organ procurement at 10 a.m. Anna's voice broke. 37 hours from now. "You recorded that 40 minutes ago?" "Yes. I was restocking the medication room. His office shares a wall. I heard him through the ventilation system and—" She looked down at her phone. "I knew if I didn't document it, no one would believe me. I'm risking my career telling you this. Probably my license. But I have a daughter. She's 7. If someone was doing this to her, I'd want someone to tell me." Reaper pulled out his own phone, scrolled to a contact labeled Tank, Presses. "Ma'am, I don't know why you're risking everything to tell me this, but my son is a United States citizen and he has rights. I'm a Marine, and I took an oath to protect the innocent from enemies foreign and domestic." He looked at her. That doctor just became a domestic enemy. He pressed call. Robert Tank Williams answered on the second ring. 58 years old. Chapter President of the Hells Angels Tennessee Charter. Vietnam veteran. Lost his daughter to medical malpractice in 1994 for wrong medication prescribed by a doctor who was later found to have been working while impaired. Tank's daughter was 7 years old. Her name was Rebecca. Tank, it's Reaper. Brother, you okay? I need every member within 6 hours' ride at Vanderbilt Regional Medical Center. Now. Brief pause. In that silence, Tank processed tone, urgency, the fact that Reaper hadn't called anyone in the club for 3 weeks because he'd been living at his son's bedside. What's going on? Dylan's doctor is falsifying his medical records to harvest his organs for money. I have a recording. He's killed 11 kids in 3 years. They're scheduled to kill my son in 37 hours. We're not waiting for cops to take their time on this one. Say no more. We're coming. The line went dead. Reaper looked at Anna. He extended his right hand, not for a handshake, but palm up, offering trust and alliance. When she placed her hand in his, he covered it with his left hand, creating a complete circle. The same gesture Marines use when making a blood oath to fallen brothers. You saved my son's life tonight, he said quietly. That makes you family. Hell's Angels protect family. Always. Then he pulled up his contacts again. By 1:00 a.m., he'd made 6 more calls. Kentucky chapter, Arkansas chapter, members who'd ridden with him for years, brothers who'd stood beside him at his wife's funeral 8 years ago when Dylan was born, and Melissa died bringing him into the world. Men who understood that when one of theirs was threatened, state lines didn't matter. By dawn, 97 motorcycles would converge on Nashville. The rumble started low, distant, like thunder on the horizon. It was 6:47 a.m., Friday morning, October 27th, 13 hours and 13 minutes before Dylan Walsh's scheduled organ harvest. The sound grew, not chaotic, controlled, rhythmic. The deep-throated roar of 97 Harley-Davidson engines moving in formation, traveling north on Interstate 40, then splitting into 3 columns as they approached Nashville city limits. C. Chapter 41. Bikes. Kentucky chapter from Louisville. 33 bikes. 2-hour ride through the night. Arkansas chapter from Memphis. 23 bikes. 3-hour ride. They converged at a truck stop 6 miles from Vanderbilt Regional Medical Center at 6:52 a.m. Staging area. Tank gave the brief to all 3 chapter presidents in a parking lot under halogen lights, while engines idled in perfect rows behind them. We're not a mob, Tank said, voice carrying over the rumble. We're not a protest. We're witnesses. We document, we stand, we make sure that hospital knows the whole country is watching. No hands on anyone. No threats. We're walls. We're cameras. We're the pressure that makes corruption crack. At 7:11 a.m., they rolled out. By 7:34 a.m., 97 motorcycles lined the asphalt of Vanderbilt Regional's overflow parking lot in perfect formation. 4 rows. Tight spacing, practiced from years of riding together. The engines cut off in a wave, one by one by one, until only silence remained. The kind of silence that feels heavy after all that thunder. Then 97 men dismounted. Leather cuts bearing the same insignia. Ages ranging from 29 to 74. Backgrounds you wouldn't guess from looking at them. Former cops, combat medics, teachers, IT specialists, social workers, mechanics, one retired federal judge. They didn't march. They walked. Steady, purposeful, toward the main entrance. Hospital security met them at the sliding doors. 2 guards, young, looking nervous. "Sirs, visiting hours don't start until 8 Hancock." Tank stepped forward. 6'1", gray beard, patches on his cut that told stories you didn't want to hear. But his voice came out gentle. "We're not here to visit. We're here to bear witness. One of our brothers has a son in ICU room 4B. That son is scheduled to have life support withdrawn in 26 minutes. We have evidence of medical fraud. We've already contacted Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. They're en route. We'll wait in your lobby until they arrive." The guard looked past Tank at 96 men standing in silence. No shouting, no aggression, just presence. I need to call my supervisor." "You do that," Tank said. Now, you might be thinking, 97 Hell's Angels descending on a hospital, and their first move is to politely request lobby access. That's not the story you expected, is it? Maybe you imagined broken glass, intimidation, chaos brewing. But here's what you need to understand about the kind of men who'd ridden through the night for a child they'd never met. They'd spent decades learning that violence makes you the villain. Documentation makes you the victor. So while security scrambled and hospital administrators made frantic calls, 5 specific members of the Tennessee chapter got to work. Patrick Lawman Sullivan, 52, ex-Nashville PD detective. 22 years on the force before early retirement after exposing a corruption case that his own department buried. He knew how to document evidence for prosecution. He knew which forms to file, which agencies to contact, how to create a paper trail that couldn't be ignored. At 7:41 a.m., Lawman made 3 calls. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Request for immediate investigation into medical fraud and potential homicide. FBI Nashville Field Office. Report of suspected organ procurement fraud affecting interstate commerce. Kentucky and Arkansas chapters' involvement made it federal. Tennessee Medical Board. Formal complaint against Dr. Garrett Allen Preston's medical license, with attached audio recording. "They'll try to bury this," Lawman told Reaper, "so we make it too big to bury. Multiple agencies, multiple jurisdictions, make them trip over each other trying to respond." James Doc Morrison, 61, Vietnam combat medic, ER nurse for 28 years. He knew medical terminology. He knew how to read charts. He knew what proper neurological assessment looked like. At 7:49 a.m., Doc walked up to the ICU charge nurse station with Reaper beside him. Calm. Professional. "Ma'am, I'm a registered nurse. This is Dylan Walsh's father. We're requesting his complete medical chart for review before any life support decision is executed. Tennessee Patients' Rights Law guarantees family access to medical records. We'll wait." The charge nurse looked between them. Dr. Preston would need to authorize. "Dr. Preston is the subject of a criminal investigation that began 40 minutes ago," Lawman said, appearing beside Doc. He placed a printed document on the counter. TBI case number, investigator assigned, timestamp. Until that investigation concludes, his authorization isn't worth the paper it's printed on. The chart. Now. She made the chart. Michael Professor Zhang, 47, former social worker, family court advocate for 19 years. He knew how to navigate hospital ethics committees. He knew how to file emergency petitions. He knew patient advocacy law. At 7:53 a.m., Professor was on the phone with a family law attorney he'd worked with for years, filing emergency motion for temporary restraining order against the hospital, prohibit any life support withdrawal pending independent medical evaluation. Judge's clerk said earliest hearing was Monday. "Tell the judge we have evidence of 11 potential homicides," Professor said. "Tell him there's a recording of a doctor describing how he manages sedation to fake brain death. Tell him if he doesn't grant emergency relief in the next 2 hours, a child will die, and it'll be national news by lunch. Emergency hearing scheduled for 10:30 a.m. Kevin Bite Torres, 29, IT security specialist, youngest chapter member, handled digital evidence. At 8:04 a.m., he'd already uploaded Anna's recording to 3 separate cloud servers, different states, different companies. Created encrypted copies sent to 2 journalists he knew from previous whistleblower cases, sent the audio file to every member of the Tennessee Medical Board's disciplinary committee. Even if they try to make the original disappear, Bite explained to Reaper, there are now 47 copies in 11 different locations. You can't kill what you can't contain. Frank Ironside Williams, 74, Tank's father, club founder, Korean War veteran. Lost his leg in combat in 1952. Moral compass of the chapter. He sat in the lobby in his wheelchair, white beard, leather cut, looking like someone's grandfather, which he was, to 14 grandchildren and 8 great-grandchildren. Hospital administrators kept walking past him, making calls, clearly trying to figure out what to do with 97 bikers who weren't breaking any laws. Ironside just sat there, calm, present. When a young mother with a toddler walked past, looking nervous, he smiled at the child. "Motorcycles are loud, aren't they?" he said gently. "But we're the good guys. Promise." The mother relaxed. The toddler waved. That's the moment a local news crew filming outside caught on camera. Went viral by noon. At 8:17 a.m., 3 Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agents arrived. Lead agent was a woman named Detective Emily Vance, 43, Crimes Against Children Unit. She'd worked 89 cases of medical child abuse in 12 years. She did not look impressed with the situation she'd walked into. "Who has the recording?" she asked. Reaper stepped forward. "I do. The nurse who made it is upstairs. She'll give a statement." "I need to hear it." They moved to a conference room. Vance listened to the full audio twice, took notes. Her expression didn't change, but Reaper saw her grip on the pen tighten when Preston said, "The kid's showing some response, but nothing I can't manage with sedation timing." "How many times did he say he's done this?" Vance asked. 11. In 3 years. We'll need to pull records on every pediatric organ donor under Dr. Preston's care for the past 5 years. That'll take time. But, she looked at Reaper, your son's procedure is on hold as of right now. I'm placing a medical hold on this case pending investigation. Can you do that? I just did. But here's the thing about institutional corruption. It doesn't live in one person. It lives in systems. And systems protect themselves. At 8:34 a.m., Dr. Preston's boss, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Richard Brennan, 59, hospital administrator for 16 years, called an emergency meeting in his office, demanded that TBI explain why they were disrupting hospital operations based on hearsay from a biker gang. That's when Lawman handed him a folder. Inside, documentation of 3 previous complaints against Dr. Preston from ICU nurses who'd since transferred out or quit. All 3 complaints cited ethical concerns regarding organ procurement pressure. All 3 had been dismissed by hospital HR as personality conflicts without investigation. Your hospital knew, Lawman said flatly. You knew doctors were raising red flags, and you buried it because Dr. Preston's procurement numbers made you look good to organ donation networks. You want to call us a gang? We're civilians exercising our legal right to report suspected crimes. You're the ones who covered it up. Dr. Brennan's face went pale. I want my lawyer, he said. At 9:03 a.m., Doc and Professor started interviewing hospital staff. Quietly. Professionally. Just asking questions. They found Margaret Hayes, 67, retired ICU nurse who'd quit Vanderbilt 2 years earlier after 31 years of service. She lived 6 miles from the hospital. Professor called her. She arrived at 9:47 a.m. Margaret sat in the conference room, hands shaking as she spoke. She couldn't meet Detective Vance's eyes at first. "I knew something was wrong in 2023, Margaret said. "There was a boy, Brandon Patterson. 11 years old, car accident. I was his nurse for 4 days. He had pupil response. I documented it. Dr. Preston told me to remove it from the chart, said I was seeing reflexes, not consciousness." "Did you remove it?" Vance asked. "Yes." Her voice broke. "I did. Because I was 2 years from retirement and I needed my pension, and Dr. Preston was chief of neurology, and who was going to believe me?" Tears now. Brandon's mother told me he'd squeezed her hand the day before Dr. Preston declared him brain dead. She begged me to tell someone. I didn't. I let them take that boy's organs because I was a coward. "How many times did you see this pattern?" Vance asked. 3 times in 18 months. Always the same. Young patient, head trauma, early improvement signs, then sudden brain death determination, then organ procurement within 48 hours. I quit because I couldn't watch it anymore, but I never reported it." Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "I convinced myself I was wrong, that Dr. Preston knew better, that I was just an old nurse who didn't understand modern medicine." She finally looked at Vance. "I knew. I just didn't want to be the one who said it out loud." They found Robert Chen, 42, father of Brandon Patterson. He'd kept everything. Every document. Every note. The email he wasn't supposed to see, forwarded to him by accident by a hospital clerk, from Dr. Preston to the organ procurement coordinator. "Optimal candidate. Will handle family." Robert drove down from Clarksville, arrived at 10:21 a.m., walked into that hospital with a box of papers and a face that looked like he hadn't slept well in 19 months. "My son died on March 14th, 2023, Robert said. "They told me it was mercy, that he was gone, that donating his organs would give meaning to our tragedy." He opened the box. "This is the insurance policy they didn't tell me about. $141,000 payout. Taken out 6 weeks before the accident by Brandon's stepfather, my ex-wife's new husband. This is the hospital's organ procurement report. It lists Dr. Preston as consulting physician, and there's a notation. Expedited procurement, optimal timeline." He pulled out more papers. "This is the death certificate. Cause of death. Brain death following trauma. But this..." He held up a medical record he'd obtained through a lawyer. "Is the neurological exam from the 2nd day. It shows inconsistent with brain death. Pupil response noted. Gag reflex present. None of that was in the chart they showed me when they asked me to sign consent." "Why didn't you come forward before?" Vance asked. "I tried. I filed a complaint with the Tennessee Medical Board. They said there was insufficient evidence of wrongdoing. I filed a complaint with the hospital. They said I was experiencing complicated grief and offered me free counseling." His voice hardened. "Then my ex-wife's husband, the one who took out the insurance, left her 3 months after the payout. Took $90,000 with him. Never found. Police said it was a civil matter." He looked at Reaper. "I heard about your son on the police scanner this morning. My neighbor's a cop. I knew it was the same thing. I'm sorry I didn't do more to stop this sooner." At 10:44 a.m., Detective Vance had enough for arrest warrants. She called it in. Within the hour, the DA's office issued warrants for Dr. Garrett Allen Preston on the following charges: medical fraud, 11 counts; falsification of medical records, 11 counts. Conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. 2 counts. Brandon Patterson and Jessica Reynolds' cases had insurance policies. Involuntary manslaughter, pending further investigation into previous victims. Attempted murder, Dylan Walsh case. They found Dr. Preston at 11:53 a.m. Not at the hospital, at his home. 3847 Belle Meade Boulevard, $1.2 million house in Nashville's wealthiest neighborhood. When police arrived, weapons drawn, 6 officers, 3 unmarked cars, Dr. Garrett Preston was in his driveway, washing his Tesla, wearing cargo shorts and a Vanderbilt Medical School t-shirt, humming something that might have been classic rock. He looked up when the cars pulled in, confused, annoyed, like a man interrupted during a normal Saturday chore. "Can I help you?" he asked. "Dr. Garrett Preston?" "Yes." "You're under arrest." They read him his rights right there in the driveway, face against the hood of his $96,000 car, hands cuffed behind his back. The same hands that had falsified 11 children's medical records. The same hands that had signed off on organ harvests for children who might have lived. He looked so ordinary. That was the thing that would haunt people later. Not a monster, not someone you'd spot in a crowd. Just a man in shorts, washing his car, living in a nice house, looking like every other successful doctor in every other wealthy neighborhood. Evil wears ordinary faces. At 1:47 p.m., Tank called a meeting in the hospital parking lot. All 97 members present. They stood in a circle. No hierarchy visible. Just brothers. "We've done what we came to do," Tank said. "Dylan's safe. Doctor's in custody. TBI has the evidence. Lawyers are filing motions. The system, the real system, the one that works when people force it to work, is now engaged." He looked around the circle. "But we're not leaving until we know Dylan's protected. Hospital's going to assign a new doctor. Independent neurologist is coming from Memphis to evaluate him. We're going to be in that lobby until Dylan either wakes up or we know for certain that he can't. We're going to be the reason they have to do this right." Silence. Then Tank asked, "All in favor?" For a moment, nothing. Just wind across the parking lot, the distant sound of traffic. Someone's radio playing low. Then every single hand went up, not a moment's hesitation, not a single dissenting voice. 97 men voting unanimously to sit in a hospital lobby for however long it took to make sure one 8-year-old boy got the care he deserved. By 3:15 p.m. that Friday afternoon, Dr. Michael Foster arrived from Memphis. 64 years old, retired neurologist with 37 years of experience, no affiliation with Vanderbilt Regional. He'd examined Brandon Patterson's medical records after that boy's death in 2023, found inconsistencies that troubled him, but had no standing to investigate further at the time. When Detective Vance called him that morning and explained the situation, he was on the road within the hour. Doc Morrison walked with him to ICU Room 4B. Professional courtesy between medical people, one retired, one still practicing, both committed to the same oath they'd taken decades ago. Reaper stood outside his son's room, watching through the window. He'd been asked to wait in the hallway during the examination. He understood why. Objectivity required distance, but understanding didn't make it easier to stand there, watching a stranger evaluate whether his son had a future. The exam took 47 minutes. When Dr. Foster emerged, his expression was carefully neutral. He asked Reaper to join him in a consultation room. Tank, Doc, and Professor came too. Witnesses. Documentation. "Your son is not brain dead," Dr. Foster said. First words. Clear and direct. He's in a coma, but he has demonstrable neurological activity. Pupil response is present and consistent. He has a gag reflex, spontaneous breathing efforts, pain response in all 4 extremities. These are not reflexes. These are indications of cortical function. Reaper's hand gripped the edge of the table. Why didn't anyone see this before? They did. At least the nursing staff documented signs of it, but those notations weren't incorporated into Dr. Preston's official assessments. Additionally, Dr. Foster pulled out Dylan's medication record. Your son has been maintained on propofol at doses significantly higher than standard for a patient his size, during daytime hours specifically. That level of sedation would suppress most visible neurological responses. He was drugging him to make him look brain dead. That's what the evidence suggests. Yeah, Doctor. Foster's voice remained clinical, but anger flickered beneath it. I've adjusted his sedation protocol. We'll begin reducing it gradually over the next 48 hours. If my assessment is correct, we should see increased responsiveness. And if you're right, what's his prognosis? Dr. Foster met his eyes. I can't promise you a full recovery. Traumatic brain injury is unpredictable, but your son has been fighting to wake up for 3 weeks while being chemically prevented from doing so. That tells me he has neurological resilience. With proper rehabilitation, supportive care, time, I believe Dylan has a chance. A real one. Reaper put his face in his hands. Didn't cry. He was too exhausted for that. But his shoulders shook with the kind of relief that feels almost like pain. Tank put a hand on his back, said nothing, just stood there. Over the next 72 hours, shifts were established. Lawman coordinated with hospital administration and TBI to ensure Dylan's case was monitored. Security protocols implemented. Only approved medical staff could enter Dylan's room. All visitors logged. Second nurse required to witness any medication administration. Professor worked with the family law attorney. Emergency custody order granted. Reaper's parental rights formally protected. Hospital could not make any life support decisions without his explicit written consent. Court-appointed patient advocate assigned to Dylan's case. Independent of hospital. Bite handled media. Local news became regional news, became national news. Hospital saves boy. After biker gang exposes doctor's organ harvesting scheme, played better than the truth, but it kept pressure on. Made it impossible for this to disappear quietly. Doc coordinated with Dylan's new medical team. Physical therapy evaluation scheduled. Occupational therapy. Speech therapy for when, if, Dylan woke up. Planning for recovery before recovery happened, because hope required preparation. And Ironside? He sat in Dylan's room and read to him. Every day. Harry Potter, because Reaper mentioned Dylan had been reading the 4th book before the accident. Ironside's voice, rough from age and cigarettes, reading about dragons and champions, and a boy who survived impossible things. Don't know if he can hear me, Ironside told Reaper on day 3. But I figure if there's any chance he's in there listening, he should know someone's still telling him stories. On Tuesday, October 31st, Halloween, 5 days after Sarah Mitchell ran across that parking lot, Dylan moved. Not much. Just his right hand, fingers curling slightly when Reaper said his name. But it was voluntary. Purposeful. Responding to stimulus. The ICU erupted in controlled chaos. Doctors called, tests ordered, scans performed. And through it all, Reaper sat beside his son's bed, holding that small hand, whispering, "I'm here, buddy. I'm right here." By November 4th, Dylan's eyes opened for the first time in 32 days, confused. Disoriented, but open. He couldn't speak yet. The breathing tube had been removed only 2 days earlier, but his eyes tracked movement. He recognized his father's voice. When Reaper asked him to squeeze his hand, Dylan did. The neurologist called it emerging from minimally conscious state. The prognosis remained guarded. Rehabilitation would be long. Cognitive function still uncertain. But Dylan was waking up. He was waking up because 97 men had refused to let him die quietly. The logistics of recovery are unglamorous. Physical therapy 3 times a week at a facility 40 minutes away. Occupational therapy twice a week. Speech therapy. Cognitive rehabilitation. Medical bills that even insurance couldn't fully cover. $180,000 out of pocket projected over the first year alone. Reaper's construction job had long since moved to another project. His savings were gone. He'd been living on borrowed money and the generosity of his mother, who was 74, and living on Social Security. That's when the club mobilized differently. The Tennessee chapter held a fundraiser. Bike show, raffle, barbecue dinner. Raised $14,000. The Kentucky chapter contributed another $11,000. Arkansas sent $8,000. Word spread through the national organization. California, Florida, Texas, New York, chapters Reaper had never even met, sent money. By December, they'd raised $42,000. Tank presented the check to Reaper in Dylan's hospital room, 2 weeks before Christmas. Dylan was awake by then, able to speak in short sentences, sitting up with assistants, working on relearning how to use his left side. "This is from 23 chapters across the country," Tank said. 217 members contributed. Some sent $20. Some sent $500. All sent it because that's what family does. Reaper tried to find words. Couldn't. Just nodded. Dylan, watching from his bed, whispered, "Are they all my uncles now?" "Every single one," Tank said. "You've got 217 uncles who want to see you get better." Dylan smiled. First real smile since the accident. By January, Dylan moved to outpatient rehabilitation, still using a wheelchair, but progressing to a walker for short distances. Speech clearer. Memory returning in pieces. Some things he remembered perfectly. His mother's face from photographs, his father's bike, the ice cream shop. Other things remained blank. The accident itself, the weeks in the hospital, the doctor who'd tried to kill him. Maybe that was mercy. Reaper moved them into a small rental house in East Nashville. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, nothing fancy. Brothers from the club helped with the deposit. First month, last month, security deposit, total $3,400. Lawman co-signed the lease when the landlord balked at Reaper's credit history. Professor helped Reaper file for disability benefits for Dylan. Qualified as catastrophic injury, approved within 6 weeks. Monthly support would help cover ongoing therapy costs. Doc arranged for a visiting nurse twice a week. Checking vitals, monitoring medications, teaching Reaper how to manage care at home. Her name was Claire. She'd worked ICU for 15 years. She knew what real recovery looked like, and she told Reaper honestly, "Your son is a fighter. I've seen patients with half his function give up. He's not giving up." Bite set up a GoFundMe for Dylan's ongoing care. Posted the story, carefully, with Reaper's permission, on social media. The account raised another $67,000 from strangers who'd seen the news coverage, who'd been moved by the idea of bikers protecting a child, who wanted to believe that good people still existed in the world. It was enough. Not comfortable, not easy, but enough. In February, something else happened. The Tennessee Medical Board, facing public pressure and a lawsuit filed by Robert Chen and 2 other families of Dr. Preston's victims, launched a comprehensive investigation. They reviewed 47 pediatric organ procurement cases from Vanderbilt Regional over 5 years, found irregularities in 13 cases, all 13 under Dr. Preston's care. 3 additional doctors were implicated for turning blind eyes to suspicious patterns. 2 hospital administrators were fired. Vanderbilt Regional settled a civil suit with the Patterson and Reynolds families for undisclosed amounts, rumored to be in excess of $2 million combined. Dr. Preston's medical license was permanently revoked. His trial was scheduled for September. Federal charges added healthcare fraud affecting interstate commerce. Prosecutors were seeking 20 years minimum, and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation implemented new protocols. Any pediatric organ procurement case now required 2 independent neurologists to confirm brain death, separated by at least 48 hours, neither affiliated with the hospital. They called it Dillon's Law. Some people said it was too little, too late, that 11 children were already dead, and no protocol would bring them back. They were right, but it would save the next child, and the child after that, and that had to count for something. On Dillon's 9th birthday, March 17th, the club threw a party at their clubhouse on Iron Horse Road. Not fancy. Burgers on the grill, birthday cake from Kroger, decorations that Tank's grandkids helped hang. But 60 people showed up. Club members, their families, Anna Mitchell with her daughter, Dr. Foster, even Margaret Hayes, the retired nurse who'd testified against Dr. Preston. Dillon sat in his wheelchair, wearing a Hell's Angels t-shirt 3 sizes too big, smiling wider than he'd smiled since before the accident. His speech was still slow, careful, but when Tank asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up, Dillon didn't hesitate. "A nurse," he said, "like Miss Anna, so I can help people who are scared in the hospital." Anna, standing across the room, started crying. By summer, Dillon was walking with a cane. Not graceful, not fast, but walking. Back in school, 4th grade now, repeated 3rd after missing so much. He'd need special accommodations for years, maybe forever. Some cognitive deficits would likely be permanent. He'd never be exactly who he would have been before the accident. But he was alive. He was laughing. He was learning. He was here. The leather friendship bracelet his father had given him, black and orange, club colors, still circled his left wrist. He'd worn it through the coma, through the surgery to place his feeding tube, through every therapy session. It was worn now, fraying at the edges. Anna Mitchell came to visit one Saturday in July, brought her daughter. The girls played in the backyard, while Anna and Reaper sat on the porch, drinking sweet tea, watching Dillon chase butterflies with more enthusiasm than coordination. "I still can't believe you risked everything for him," Reaper said. Anna shook her head. "I didn't risk everything. I risked my job. You risked believing a stranger in a parking lot at midnight. That took more courage. You gave me the evidence. You made the call." She looked at him. How many parents would have just accepted what the doctors said? How many would have signed the consent forms because authority figures told them it was right? You didn't. That saved his life as much as anything I did. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Anna pulled something from her bag. A leather bracelet, braided black and orange, matching Dillon's. "He made this," she said, "in occupational therapy. They've been working on fine motor skills. He wanted you to give it to me. Said I'm family now." Reaper helped her tie it around her wrist. "Let me tell you what this story is really about. It's not about bikers. It's not about dramatic rescues or last-minute interventions. Those things happened, yes, but they're not the point. This story is about what happens when systems fail." When the people we're supposed to trust, doctors, hospitals, ethics committees, become so focused on outcomes and efficiency and metrics that they forget individual human beings matter. Dylan Walsh was a number to Dr. Preston. A procurement case, a $163,000 recovery value, a way to improve hospital statistics and collect a commission. When Dylan started showing signs of improvement, Preston didn't see a miracle. He saw an inconvenience to be managed with careful sedation timing. And the truly terrifying part? The system protected Preston. For 3 years. Through 11 cases. Despite nurses raising concerns, despite families asking questions, despite red flags visible to anyone paying attention. The system protected him because he made the system look good. That's the real monster in this story, not one corrupt doctor. The infrastructure that allowed him to operate unchallenged. The hospital administrators who didn't investigate complaints because Preston's procurement numbers were excellent. The ethics committee that rubber-stamped his decisions. The medical board that dismissed concerned families as grief-stricken and irrational. The system ate 11 children before someone finally forced it to stop. But here's the other truth this story tells. You don't need to be a Hell's Angel to be a protector. You don't need a motorcycle or a leather cut or 96 brothers at your back. Anna Mitchell stopped this with a phone recording and the courage to use it. Margaret Hayes stopped it from continuing by finally telling the truth she'd been too afraid to tell before. Robert Chen stopped it by refusing to let his son's death be meaningless, by keeping documents and fighting for answers even when the system told him to move on. Every single person who saw something wrong and said something, even when it was inconvenient, even when it was scary, even when they weren't sure anyone would believe them, contributed to saving Dylan's life. That's the real power in this story, not the dramatic confrontation, the decision to care enough to act. If you've ever walked past something that felt wrong and told yourself it wasn't your business, you understand the weight of that choice. If you've ever noticed a child who seemed too quiet, too careful, too controlled, and convinced yourself you were probably imagining things, you know how easy it is to look away. This story asks you not to. Pay attention. Listen when someone hesitates. Ask uncomfortable questions when patterns don't add up. Care enough to risk being wrong, being inconvenient, being the person who makes things awkward by refusing to stay silent. You might save a life. You might save several. Or you might find out you were mistaken, and the child is fine, and you feel embarrassed for a moment. That embarrassment is worth it. Every time. Because somewhere right now, there's another Dylan, another child in a hospital bed, trapped in a system that stopped seeing them as human. Another family being pressured to accept reality when reality is being manipulated by people who have financial incentives to harvest organs quickly. And the only thing that stops those situations is people who refuse to look away. 3 years after that October night when Anna ran across a parking lot to tell a stranger his son was being murdered, Dylan Walsh stood in a high school gymnasium wearing a volunteer badge. He was 12 now. Walking without a cane most days, though he still limped when he was tired. Speaking clearly, though sometimes he'd pause mid-sentence, searching for words his brain was still relearning how to access. He was helping at a blood drive, talking to nervous donors, explaining the process, telling them how much their donation mattered. Someone asked him why he volunteered here. Dylan touched the leather bracelet on his wrist. Black and orange, now carefully preserved behind a newer one his father had made him. The original was framed on his bedroom wall. "Because people saved my life when I couldn't save myself," Dylan said. "Now I help however I can. even if it's just holding someone's hand while they donate. That matters. It matters. Those two words are the entire point. You matter. Your decision to pay attention matters. Your willingness to speak up, to intervene, to be inconvenient when injustice is convenient. It matters. This story happened because a nurse decided her conscience mattered more than her career. Because a father decided trust mattered more than caution. Because 97 men decided that a child they'd never met mattered more than their Saturday plans. Every single one of those decisions rippled outward, changed policy, saved future children, gave Dylan Walsh a 13th birthday and a 14th, and every year after that he wouldn't have had. Small decisions, massive consequences. If this story moved you, I need you to do something. Not just subscribe, though please do that. Not just share, though that helps more people see this. I need you to decide that the next time something feels wrong, you'll pay attention. The next time someone seems to need help, you'll offer it. The next time a system tells you to be quiet and accept what authority says, you'll ask questions. Be the person who runs across the parking lot at midnight to tell a stranger the truth. Be the person who keeps documents when others say to move on. Be the person who shows up when called, no questions asked. Be the wall between vulnerable people and the systems that would consume them. That's what heroes actually do. Not grand gestures. Small, brave choices made in moments when it would be easier to look away. Comment below if you're willing to be that person. Tell me about a time you saw something wrong and spoke up, or a time you wish you had. Tell me you stand with Dylan, with Anna, with every family that's had to fight systems that forgot their humanity. And subscribe if you believe there are still good people in the world. Still protectors. Still families bound not by blood, but by the shared commitment to defend those who can't defend themselves. Because there are. I promise you, there are. And maybe, just maybe, one of them is you. In the summer of 2028, Dylan Walsh, 14 years old, honor roll student, volunteer EMT cadet, testified before the Tennessee State Legislature in support of expanded patient protection laws. He walked to the microphone without assistance, spoke clearly, told his story without drama, just facts. When he finished, he said one more thing. I'm alive because people refused to accept that I was disposable. I'm here because my value as a human being mattered more to strangers than my value as spare parts. If this law saves even one other kid, then everything I went through will have been worth it. The bill passed unanimously. They called it the Patient's First Act, but everyone knew whose name it really carried. Thank you for reading Dylan's story. If you believe in standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves, subscribe to Gentle Bikers for more stories that prove heroes come in unexpected forms. Your voice, your attention, your willingness to care, that changes everything.